Hi, I'm Thea. I turned 18 alone. No candles blown out by anyone but me, no hugs, not even a slice of cake shared. My mom told me to stop making a scene. My stepfather laughed in my face and said, "You don't have a real family." They gave the gift I bought to someone else. They used my scholarship to pay their bills. Then they kicked me out in the rain like I was nothing. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was how long I believed they loved me. Why did 6 Rolls-Royces show up in my driveway 2 weeks later? What did they know about the truth I never got to keep? The morning of my 18th birthday began like any other day in the Halden household. Quiet, indifferent, and sterile in a way that even sunlight couldn't soften. The Georgia light spilled through the blinds, dappling the kitchen tiles as I stood barefoot, staring at the cake box on the counter. It was pink, too pink maybe, with a ribbon I tied myself the night before. Vanilla with strawberry filling. No one had asked what kind I liked. They never had. I opened the box slowly, just to make sure it hadn't collapsed overnight. Still perfect. Still untouched. I had woken up early to beat the noise, if you could call the Halden house noisy. It wasn't the kind of loud that came from laughter or conversation. It was the cold kind, the kind where people shuffled around, pretending you weren't standing right there. By 9 a.m., I'd already hung the streamers across the backyard patio, twisted each balloon to match a soft pastel color scheme, and set up a cheap folding table with paper plates and a few gift bags. Empty bags, stage props. I knew better than to expect real gifts. Maybe it was stupid, but I kept telling myself, maybe this year someone remembers. I don't know what gave me hope. Maybe it was because I'd seen Vera glance at the calendar earlier in the week and pause, for half a second, at the little number 18. Or maybe it was because Malis had mentioned something this weekend before brushing past me in the hallway. That something wasn't today, I would later learn. At noon, the sun hit the backyard full on. The shadows under the trees shrank away. I checked my phone again. No messages. Not even a pity text from someone who'd forgotten my name, but remembered the date. I hit refresh. Nothing. Still, I carried out the cupcakes. 16 little pink ones, 2 white, all with icing swirls I piped myself. I'd saved up for the frosting tips from a clearance bin at Michael's. The wind kept blowing out the lighter as I tried to light the candles. My fingers trembled more than I wanted to admit. I finally got 3 lit before they fizzled. From the house, I could hear silverware clinking. Voices. Laughter. I turned my head and saw the curtains move in the dining room. I walked inside, hoping maybe they were setting up a surprise. It was my 18th birthday after all. Instead, I saw Malis sitting at the dining table, a smoothie in her hand, scrolling through her phone. Stellan, my stepbrother, was laughing at something Vera said, and Conroy, my stepfather, was halfway through a plate of pot roast. Pot roast. My favorite. I blinked once. Maybe I had said something. Maybe I hadn't. The words stayed jammed in my throat like a bite of bread without water. "Hey," I finally murmured. "Is this for something?" Stellan looked up, surprised to see me. Malis didn't even glance up. "Oh," Vera said, eyes flicking to me. "Stellan did great on his physics test. Thought he deserved a little reward." My lips parted, but nothing came out. "I like pot roast too," I said, quieter than I meant to. Vera shrugged. "Good for you." I walked back out before the heat in my face exploded into something I couldn't control. Outside, the paper napkins had started to flutter away. I chased them down, pressing each one back into place. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they were just distracted. I checked the time. 2:04 p.m. By 3 p.m., I stopped pretending they might come out. At 3:17, I lit the candles again, this time letting just one flicker. I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't sure if I should make a wish. I didn't know what I'd even wish for anymore. That was when I walked back inside. Something in me cracked. Not loudly, more like a hairline fracture. Vera was standing by the sink, rinsing dishes from their meal. "Hey," I said. I set up outside. "If you want to come out for cake," she didn't look up. "We're cleaning up. It's just for a few minutes." Now she looked up, drying her hands with a towel like I'd interrupted something sacred. Jesus, Thea, she sighed. Stop making drama. You're not 5. I stood still. I didn't say, I started. You set up your own little birthday parade out there. Don't make it my fault no one wants to attend. Before I could speak again, Conroy chimed in from the couch, remote in hand. You don't have a real family to celebrate with anyway, he said, like he was commenting on the weather. The room chilled. I walked out, not even bothering to close the door softly. The backyard was still empty. I sat down at the wobbly plastic chair, my dress catching under one leg. I grabbed the knife, sliced into the cake with a quiet breath, and served myself a piece like I was a guest at someone else's party. The first bite tasted like cardboard, too sweet, too hollow. I reached for my phone, opened the camera, and hit record. Happy birthday, Thea, I whispered. 18, alone, but still standing. I hit stop. I didn't cry. That was new. The sun dipped lower. I wrapped the leftover cupcakes in foil. My phone buzzed. Probably an ad. I didn't check. As I reached under the table to grab the last of the paper plates, I noticed a white envelope tucked beneath the gift bags. A little bent at the corners. The ink slightly smudged. I didn't remember putting it there, but the handwriting was mine. I brushed the crumbs off my lap, still holding the plastic knife like it meant something. I looked again at the envelope I hadn't noticed earlier, how it had slipped beneath the tissue paper in one of the empty gift bags. My own handwriting stared back at me, slightly smudged, like I'd been in a hurry or not sure if I really wanted to finish it. I picked it up, turned it over once, twice, then slipped a finger under the flap and opened it. Inside was a folded sheet of lined paper. I unfolded it slowly, heart thudding for no good reason. It was the letter I wrote weeks ago and never expected to see again. Back when I found Dad's old address book in a dusty cardboard box in the garage, wedged between a broken weed trimmer and a crate of his army gear, I'd copied down an address on the back of a Walgreens receipt. The name read Elston Breyer. I didn't know who he was, just a scribbled note under the name. Good man, loyal to the end. That night, I sat on my bed with a blue pen and wrote like I was 6 again, trying to be brave. Hi, my name is Thea. I'm turning 18 next month. My dad was Micah Fairwin. He died when I was little, but I still remember the way he sang country songs in the kitchen and how he smelled like leather and mint gum. I saw your name in one of his notebooks. If you knew him, and if you still think of him, it would mean a lot if you could come to my birthday, even just for a minute. I guess I'd slipped the copy under the bag thinking maybe I'd need to remind myself that I did try, that I did ask someone, anyone, to show up. I sat back in the folding chair and let the envelope rest on my thigh. The air had cooled a little. The sun was shifting. Somewhere inside, the blender ran. Vera always made her cleansing smoothies before dinner. I remembered that morning, just a few hours ago, when I was trying to hang the fairy lights across the patio. I'd been standing on a paint bucket, stretching too far, just trying to get one more clip in place when the sliding door opened behind me. Vera's voice cracked through the quiet like a slap. Take those down. This isn't a pity parade. I'd nearly lost my balance, caught myself with one foot on the bucket rim. I turned around slowly, one arm still raised. They're just lights, I said. You thought wrong, she snapped. No one wants to be dragged into your little solo act. Stop begging for attention. She walked back inside before I could say anything else. I stood there a full 2 minutes after, staring at the spot where she'd been, then turned and started pulling down the strands one by one. That memory burned just as fresh as the one from earlier. When Kayla, one of the girls from my homeroom, dropped off a card, she didn't stay, just handed it through the side gate and waved awkwardly. I heard Conroy's voice float through the screen door as she walked off. She set this all up herself, he said. Still thinks she's some kind of princess. Malis had laughed. Not the full laugh she used for Instagram videos, just a sharp exhale, but it was enough. Kayla's eyes flicked to mine for a second before she left. I wondered what she thought, if she felt sorry, if she'd tell anyone, or if, like most people in this town, she'd pretend it never happened. I didn't cry that night either. Instead, I sat in the yard and ate a cupcake that tasted like nothing. I recorded another message. I didn't save it. Maybe this is who I am to them. Inconvenient, unlovable, something to be ignored until it goes away. After the cake was packed, the napkins blown into the neighbor's fence, and my dress wrinkled from sitting too long, I went inside. No one said a word. I passed the living room where Vera sat watching a true crime special, and Malis was on a call, talking about someone else's birthday party she was invited to next week. I didn't bother speaking. I climbed the stairs slowly, the envelope tight in my hand now. In my room, I placed it gently next to my bed. I stared at it for a while before reaching for my phone again. I started scrolling through my gallery, photo after photo. There was one of me in the 3rd grade, wearing a paper crown I'd made myself, no one else in the frame. Another from middle school, an awards ceremony. I was smiling, holding a certificate, but there were no arms around me, no one in the background. I kept scrolling. Graduation, last spring. Vera hadn't come. Conroy said he had work. Malis said, "It's not like it's college." All the pictures had one thing in common. I was always alone in them. As I put the phone down, I whispered to no one, "Maybe I'll get my answer tomorrow." The house had gone quiet downstairs. The light outside my window softened into a blue-gray dusk. The garland I wasn't allowed to use sat in a pile in the trash. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the occasional creak of old wood in the walls. My room smelled faintly of vanilla frosting and old books. I didn't cry. I didn't feel numb either. I felt still, and that was scarier. I lay back on my bed, pulling the thin blanket over my knees, and let my eyes rest on the envelope. If someone answered, great. If they didn't, I'd already survived the worst part. Morning sunlight crept through the slit in my curtain, casting a narrow line across the floor where dust floated gently. I blinked at the ceiling, body still but mind wide awake. There was no sudden burst of hope, no anticipation, just a steady emptiness I was getting too good at wearing. Slipping out of bed, I grabbed the oversized hoodie from the back of my chair and pulled it on. My bare feet made no sound on the hardwood as I made my way down the hall, past Malis's closed door and the bathroom, where toothpaste clung to the sink like it never got rinsed. In the kitchen, the leftovers from the night before still sat on the table. Crumpled napkins, a half-empty casserole dish, and Stellan's empty soda can tipped on its side. The air reeked faintly of gravy and burnt onion. Nobody had cleaned up. I didn't say a word, just walked through, grabbed my backpack from the floor, and returned to my room without a glance toward the living room. The TV was on, of course. Vera loved her crime documentaries early in the morning. The volume was always a little too loud, like she needed to drown out the real people in her life with fake ones. Once back in my room, I zipped my bag shut and slid it into the closet. I wasn't going anywhere yet, but it felt better to be ready. My fingers found the drawer in my nightstand, the one I rarely opened. It stuck slightly, swollen from the summer humidity, but I tugged it free and reached inside. The album was thick with a green velvet cover, dusty around the edges, a relic from when people still printed photos and bothered to put them into something you could hold. My breath caught as I flipped it open. Not from surprise, from the ache of confirmation. I scanned the first few pages, holidays, school events, birthdays. In every photo, the story was obvious. I was missing, cropped out, removed. In one, a beach shot, only half my arm remained, barely visible behind Vera's shoulder. Further in, I found a photo from a Thanksgiving dinner when I was 12. Everyone was seated at the table, smiling for the camera. The space where I had been sitting was carefully blurred, like someone had smeared Vaseline over the image. My place at the table, erased. Only one picture showed my face. It was taken from a distance, probably by accident. I was standing by the fence in our old backyard, staring at something out of frame. Someone had taken a pen and scratched a jagged line across my face. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, I flipped the album closed and leaned against the wall for a moment, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the faint murmurs from the TV downstairs. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, the one Vera had once told me to stop clinging to like a crutch. That's where I kept the letters. They were bundled with a ribbon I'd replaced twice already. The original had been torn when Vera ripped one of the envelopes from my hand 3 years ago. I remembered that day clearly. "You think she cares about you?" she had said, waving the letter in my face. "That woman only poisons your mind. We're your family now." She'd crumpled it, tossed it into the trash, and slammed my bedroom door so hard the frame cracked. I had fished the letter out after midnight, smoothed it out with my math textbook, and cried over it until the ink bled in places. Now, I untied the ribbon and laid the letters out on my bed like sacred artifacts. My Aunt Norlene's handwriting was wide and loopy, always in blue ink. Every letter started with "sweetheart," and everyone ended with "you are your father's daughter." I pulled out my phone and took a photo of them. One by one, if anyone ever tried to tell me she didn't exist, didn't care, I would have proof. Sliding the letters back into the drawer, I stood and walked out of my room. Down the hallway, past the guest bathroom, to the staircase landing where Vera had her memory wall. It was a curated gallery of perfection. Melis's ballet recital photos, Stellan's Little League trophies, and vacation shots from trips I hadn't been invited to. My absence was glaring. I searched for even one trace of myself. My science fair ribbon. Gone. The portrait I painted in 8th grade that Vera once said actually looked like something? Nowhere. I found it later, rolled up and water-stained in the laundry room behind the mop bucket. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to scream. Instead, I whispered, "I remember everything you tried to forget." The words didn't come out with rage. They floated in the air, soft and sharp, like the chill that comes after you finally open a window in a stale room. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the trunk at the foot. It was old, belonged to my dad before he enlisted. Vera never opened it, never touched it. She once said it smelled like mildew and ghosts. I didn't care. I clicked open the latches. The hinges groaned a little, but the lid lifted smoothly. Inside were his dog tags, his leather jacket, and a few folded t-shirts that smelled faintly of engine oil and cedar. Beneath them, wrapped in a piece of yellowing newspaper, was a photo. He was holding me, maybe 2 years old, smiling like the whole world was in his arms. My cheeks were round, one hand clutching his collar. He looked tired, but proud. I stared at the photo for a long time. "They erased me," I whispered. But maybe he didn't. I leaned forward, cradling the picture in my palms, and that's when I noticed something taped to the underside of the trunk lid, a small, square envelope, yellowed like the newspaper, with faint ink barely legible in the corner. I peeled it free slowly, heart beginning to race, not the panicked kind, but the kind that came when something long buried was about to surface. I turned the envelope over. Taped to the back was a business card. It read, "Elston Breyer, Veteran Services Advocate," and beneath it, in my father's handwriting, "If she ever needs someone." I didn't sleep much after finding that card taped inside my dad's trunk. The room had gone quiet around me, but my head buzzed with the weight of names, the ache of memories I never got to make, and the possibilities behind that handwritten note. If she ever needs someone. When the sun finally rose, I was already dressed, t-shirt, jeans, hair in a bun. I moved through the house like a shadow. Nobody noticed. In the kitchen, Vera was humming to herself while arranging bagels on a platter. She wore her work blouse but hadn't applied lipstick yet. Her phone was propped up against the toaster, playing some influencer mom's morning routine vlog. Melis was sitting at the counter, stirring a green smoothie and texting furiously. Stellan was on the couch, headset on, yelling at someone in his video game. I poured a glass of water and sipped it slowly, waiting. It didn't take long. Vera turned from the fridge, holding a small, shiny black box in her hand, the kind you find in electronics stores, sleek and compact. She smiled, placed it in front of Stellan, and said, "You've been working so hard, honey. You deserve this." I know those old ones were starting to glitch. He ripped it open, pulling out the exact headphones I had saved up for, the ones I'd bought with money from tutoring after school and selling a few of my art prints online. I knew it the moment I saw the model number, even before I spotted the subtle scratch on the left side that had bothered me since I unpacked them 2 weeks ago. He didn't thank me. He didn't even look in my direction, just beamed at Vera and said, "These are sick, Mom. You didn't have to." "Oh, but I did," she replied, brushing imaginary dust off his shoulder. "You've had a tough semester." I stood still, glass halfway to my lips, watching my gift be handed over like a prop in some carefully scripted performance. A gift that wasn't meant for him. A recognition that never came for me. Vera caught my eye for half a second. There was no shame in her expression, only warning. The same look she gave the dog before it barked too loud. I smiled. A quiet, tight smile that didn't reach past my teeth. Then I turned and walked back to my room without saying a word. Once inside, I sat on the edge of my bed and pulled out my phone. I still had the purchase receipt saved in my photos, along with the tracking number. After a pause, I selected the image and hit delete. If I keep letting them rewrite the story, one day I won't exist in it. Later that afternoon, the house filled with the smell of fabric softener and the echo of cheerful voices. I peeked over the stairwell, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. "Let me finish packing snacks before you start grabbing things," Vera said, half laughing, half commanding. "Do we really need to bring board games?" Malis groaned. "It's just 2 nights." Stellan appeared from the hallway dragging a duffel bag, grinning. "It's gonna be lit. I call the front seat." That's when Vera clapped her hands once and declared, "Okay, Blue Ridge, here we come." My heart skipped. A trip. I stepped down the stairs, hopeful without meaning to be. Vera looked up, saw me, and her smile flattened. "Not you, Thea. This trip is for those who don't start trouble." I blinked. "What?" My voice barely carried. "You heard me," she said coolly, folding a sweater into her tote. "I won't have you sulking in a cabin, making everyone walk on eggshells." I looked to Malis, who busied herself with her nails, then to Stellan, who avoided my gaze entirely. No one spoke for me. "I never got a trip," I said quietly. "Not once." Vera zipped the bag shut and replied without looking at me. "That's because you don't act like family." The words landed like stone. Heavy, intentional. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I walked back upstairs slowly, deliberately, every step reminding me that I had a choice. I could keep letting them erase me, or I could document everything. In my room, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the family vacation itinerary taped to the fridge, and uploaded it to a new cloud folder I titled Truth Archive. Then I opened a notes app and typed the time, the quote, and who said what. I didn't know yet what I'd do with it, but I knew it mattered to have it. They want silence? Fine. I'll give them something to remember it by. Just before dinner, I sent Malis a text. "If you knew what Mom was hiding, would you still smile like that?" I saw the read receipt, but she never responded. At bedtime, the house was unusually quiet. Everyone must have been resting for the drive up the next morning. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, heart calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. It wasn't peace. It was something heavier, something sharpening. I didn't have a seat at their table, but I was about to build my own. The floor creaked under my feet as I padded back toward my desk. The house hushed in the lull that follows disappointment. I sat down and powered on the old laptop I'd salvaged from a neighbor's garage sale 2 years ago. The screen flickered to life slowly, its age showing in every pixel. I pulled up my email, more out of habit than expectation. And there it was. Subject: Congratulations on your SCAD award. I stared at it for a moment, heart lodged somewhere between my throat and stomach. I clicked it open. The words were simple, professional. I had received a merit scholarship to the Savannah College of Art Design, a partial award based on portfolio and personal essay. The essay I wrote in the dark at 2 a.m. about identity and being edited out of my own life. About what it means to grow up in a home where your name is never said out loud unless someone's angry. I should have felt elation. Some version of triumph. Instead, I smiled to myself, not wide, not warm, but tight and satisfied. Not because someone finally saw me, but because I had made something of myself without permission. Downstairs, Vera was clanking dishes. I waited until the noise settled, then walked to the kitchen, the scholarship email still fresh in my inbox. The words burned into the back of my mind. "Vera, I said, taking a seat across from her at the table. The light from the window caught the edges of her glasses. She didn't look up, just kept slicing strawberries into a bowl. I got a scholarship. She stopped, slowly turned to me. For what? SCAD, I said. Savannah College of Art Design. She blinked. And? I'm going. She gave a small shrug and went back to her cutting board. Well, you'll still need to figure out how to pay for what the scholarship doesn't cover. We're not helping you chase fantasies, Thea. Just like that. Dismissed. It was as if I'd told her I found a coupon for toothpaste. The silence in the room stretched. I sat there, watching her cut fruit like she hadn't just told me my future didn't matter. The worst part? I wasn't even surprised. Later that night, I logged back into the financial aid portal to check the deposit status. It showed funds disbursed. My stomach dropped. I had never provided my bank information. Clicking deeper, I saw the linked account listed. It was in Vera's name. I blinked, reread it twice. I closed the page, opened it again. Same. The next hour was a blur. Me grabbing my ID, sprinting down the street to the small bank branch near the library, praying they were still open. Inside, the teller confirmed it. The scholarship had been transferred 3 days ago. I need to speak with the manager, I said. 20 minutes later, after more waiting, more uncomfortable glances, I was told the money was legally accessible to the account holder listed in the college's system, Vera. I walked home slower than I'd left, gravel digging into my shoes. The air was thick and my chest burned. I didn't wait until morning. I stood at the edge of the kitchen, where she was now scrolling through Facebook, legs crossed, wine glass in hand. You stole it, I said. She looked up, calm as still water. Excuse me? The scholarship. You took it. You didn't tell me. You didn't even ask. She set the glass down carefully. After everything I gave you, you can't even let me use your little prize to help the family? I laughed. It surprised even me. A short, flat sound. That was for school. That was for me. We all make sacrifices, she said coolly. I didn't see you offering to help when Stellan needed tutoring, or when Malis needed a new dress for prom. You live here. You eat here. You're not some guest with a tab. You mean a guest you forgot to feed for the last 18 years? Her eyes narrowed. Watch it. I took a breath, grounding myself. You're not getting away with this. Oh, and who exactly are you going to report me to? She asked. You're still a minor in this house. No, I said, meeting her gaze. I'm not. I turned 18 4 days ago. Her expression faltered, just slightly, barely a twitch. But I saw it. I turned and walked upstairs. In my room, I pulled every paper I had from the drawer, copies of the application, emails, screenshots of bank activity. I sat on the floor, organizing them by date. I saved them to a flash drive, then backed them up to the truth archive I had created. Just like I'd done with every insult, every silent exclusion, every gift stolen, and memory rewritten. At midnight, I stood in front of the mirror in my bathroom, holding a pen in my hand like a gavel. She thinks I'm a child, I whispered to my reflection. That's her first mistake. I rehearsed what I would say, if it ever came to that, in a courtroom, in front of a school board, in front of anyone who needed to hear it. The next day, I called the college's financial aid office from a payphone outside the drugstore. The woman on the line was polite, professional, and when I told her I believed my guardian had stolen the funds meant for my education, she didn't even sound surprised. She told me what to do, who to call next, what paperwork to submit. I took notes, voice steady. That evening, back at the house, I copied everything, twice. One set I hid in a box of tampons Vera never touched. The other I tucked into my school binder, which she never looked at because, as she once told me, there's nothing in those books that'll matter in 5 years. That night, I didn't sleep much. I stared at the ceiling and counted every ceiling tile. I was done reacting. Now, I was preparing. The quiet of early morning has its own kind of sharpness, clear, cutting, like it knows too much. By 4:30 a.m., I was dressed and kneeling beside my bed, zipping up the duffel bag I'd packed the night before. I wasn't frantic. Every motion was precise, measured. I folded my birth certificate into a manila envelope, placed it next to the flash drive labeled Truth Archive, and zipped that into the side pocket next to my dad's photo. I stared at it for a second longer than I meant to. Then I stood, pulled out a small notepad from the drawer, tore off a sheet, and scribbled 3 words. I'm done pretending. I didn't leave it on the kitchen table or tape it to the fridge. I placed it gently on my pillow and turned off the lamp beside the bed. That felt final. The hallway was still dim when I stepped out. My hand brushed the wooden railing, familiar and worn smooth by years of someone else's touch. I took 1 step, then 2, each creak of the stair an echo of all the things never said. Halfway down, Vera appeared like a specter, silent, suddenly there, arms crossed, lips tight. She was still wearing the robe she usually kept for Sunday mornings. Her hair was half-pinned, like she hadn't expected to be seen yet. She stared at the bag in my hand and didn't blink. "You're up early," she said, her voice neutral but edged. I didn't stop walking. "Where do you think you're going?" she pressed. I adjusted the strap on my shoulder. "Out." "That's not an answer." I reached the bottom step. "It's the only one I owe you." Her mouth twitched. "You're walking out now? After everything?" I turned toward the door. "You stole my future." She moved quickly, stepping between me and the exit. "You're ungrateful," she hissed. "We gave you a roof, fed you, let you stay here even when you made this house miserable. And this is how you repay us?" "That scholarship wasn't yours to take," I said, voice calm despite the rage curling in my gut. "Excuse me?" she snapped. "You knew it was mine," I continued. "You saw the emails. You knew what that money was for." Vera's nostrils flared. "Don't talk to me like you're some victim. That money helped this family. I'm sorry if you thought you were special." She reached for my bag. I stepped back. "Don't touch me." She grabbed it anyway, yanked it from my shoulder with a force that stunned me, and flung it toward the door. It hit the ground hard, contents shifting inside. "Get out then," she shouted. "Go find out how far your little tantrum gets you in the real world." The commotion drew Conroy from the bedroom. He stood at the top of the stairs in boxers and a stretched-out t-shirt, scratching his jaw like this was just another inconvenience in his quiet morning. "What's going on?" he asked, voice groggy. "She's leaving," Vera snapped. "Finally." Conroy looked at me, then at the duffel on the floor. He shrugged. "Maybe it's time she learns what the world's really like." No defense. No hesitation. I stared at them both for a moment, then reached for my bag. When I opened the door, the cool air hit me like a blessing. Rain had started to fall, light, steady. The street was still asleep, the sky tinged gray. I pulled my hood up and stepped out. My shoes soaked within seconds, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I walked 2 blocks before my fingers started to go numb. By the 3rd, my duffel strap had rubbed raw against my shoulder. By the 4th, I had memorized the rhythm of my own breathing. I made it to the Greyhound station just after 6. The waiting area was dimly lit and smelled faintly of bleach and old leather. A janitor nodded at me as I entered, then went back to mopping without a word. I found the women's restroom and slipped into the last stall. It had a locking door and just enough space to curl up next to the baby changing table. I sat on the floor, back against the wall, bag clutched tight to my chest. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, because I couldn't afford to. This isn't rock bottom. It's just the first honest floor I've stood on. I must have drifted in and out of sleep, because the next time I opened my eyes, it was light outside. I stood, stretched, rinsed my face in the sink, and stared at myself in the cracked mirror. My hair was frizzed, my eyes swollen. But there was something new in my reflection. Something that looked a lot like resolve. I left the station and walked 2 blocks to a small diner I remembered from when my dad used to take me for pancakes. It hadn't changed. Still smelled like grease and hope. I ordered a cup of black coffee and asked the server, a tired-looking woman named Darlene, if they had Wi-Fi. "Passwords taped under the napkin holder, hun," she said without asking any questions. I opened my laptop and connected. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed, to Elston Breyer at Veterans Connect. Org. Subject. I think my dad trusted you. I hope you trust me too. Hi, my name is Thea Fairwin. My dad was Micah Fairwin. I believe you were close once. I found your name in a box he left behind. If you remember him, I could really use someone who does. I hit send. Then I waited. I sipped my coffee slowly, stretching it as long as I could. Darlene brought me a refill without asking. I thanked her with a quiet nod. 2 hours later, my inbox pinged. The message was short. I've been waiting for this email for 9 years. When I stepped off the bus and onto the cracked pavement of a quiet street lined with old oaks, I half expected the sky to split open and explain everything. It didn't. The air was humid, the kind that clung to your skin and made you aware of every thread in your shirt. I held my bag tighter, looked down at the address I'd scribbled from the email, and made my way toward the ivy-covered gate. The house at the end of the street didn't just look old, it felt ancient. Moss lined the stone wall, and the front porch sagged slightly with the weight of memory. Wind chimes knocked gently against the siding, playing a tune that didn't quite resolve. I knocked twice, then once more, just in case. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a man with a frame built like time had pressed down on him, but hadn't broken him. Gray hair, tired eyes, but not dull, watchful. "Elston Breyer?" I asked. He nodded and opened the door wider. "You look like him." I stepped inside. The house smelled of old leather, coffee, and pine wood. Familiar in a way that made my knees almost give. It didn't feel like home, but it felt like someone had once tried to build one. He didn't offer coffee or ask if I'd eaten. He just led me down a narrow hallway, the carpet threadbare but clean, to a room at the back of the house. The study was dark wood and dust. Papers were stacked in controlled chaos. A photo of my dad sat on the corner of the desk, not framed, just tucked behind a lamp, like it belonged but didn't need to be displayed. Elston reached under the desk, pulled out a small black safe, and keyed in a combination I didn't watch. It clicked open with a soft thunk. "I kept everything he left me," he said quietly, placing a box onto the desk. "Didn't know if I'd ever need to give it to anyone, but I promised him." He gestured for me to sit. I pulled the box toward me and slowly opened the lid. Inside was a worn envelope labeled in block letters, "For Thea, 18th birthday." My throat tightened. Under it was a small velvet pouch, and beneath that, a flash drive wrapped in a sticky note that read, "Legal plus personal." I opened the envelope first. The letter inside was short. My dad's handwriting was bold, shaky in places. "Thea, if you're reading this, it means they tried to erase you. Maybe not out of cruelty, but because they were afraid of the part of me they couldn't control. You're stronger than they'll ever be. You always were. This house was meant for you. Not the walls, not the bricks. The part of it that remembers. The part they couldn't get to. You belong to something bigger than them. Bigger than the silence they tried to wrap around you. Don't let them win. Love. Dad." Tears blurred the ink, but I didn't sob. I held the letter like it was oxygen, like it could pump breath back into the parts of me that had learned to survive without air. I opened the pouch next. Inside was a small silver necklace with a round pendant etched with a symbol I recognized from my father's military box, a compass star. I fastened it around my neck. It fit like it had always been mine. Elston waited until I looked up, then slid a manila folder across the desk. "That," he said, "is the original will, not the garbage copy Vera forced through probate." I opened it slowly. Every page had legal stamps, notary seals, signatures I didn't recognize but felt the weight of. The language was direct. All property, accounts, and rights of inheritance to pass solely to Thea Fairwin upon her 18th birthday. Vera was temporary. A custodian. She had no legal right to transfer anything. She knew that. My hands trembled, but I held the folder steady. "You didn't say anything before?" He sighed. "I couldn't." "Not until you reached out. That was the deal. He wanted you to come to it on your own. Not because someone handed you a map, but because you remembered where you came from." I sat back, mind racing, not with confusion, but with clarity. They've been using my name to pay bills, to cash checks. He nodded, which makes what comes next easier to prove. I looked at him. What comes next? He smiled for the first time. We go to court. The next few hours were a blur of signatures and scanning documents. Elston had everything organized. He'd been waiting, preparing. He printed out power of attorney paperwork, explained what I was signing with the calm precision of someone who'd done this before, but never with this much personal weight. Once this is filed, he said, you'll have control, but it won't be pretty. I'm not looking for pretty, I said. I'm looking for truth. By the time I stepped back outside, the afternoon sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the gravel drive. I touched the necklace at my collarbone, still warm from my skin. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. They took my place at the table, but I still had the house, and now I had the keys to the truth. By the time we pulled into the courthouse parking lot, the sky had already begun to swell with that heavy southern humidity, thick and waiting to break. Elston parked his aging Buick between two pickup trucks, and neither of us spoke for a moment. I could hear the tick-tick of the engine cooling, the soft groan of my leather seat as I leaned forward, clasping my hands. You ready? He asked. I don't know if ready's the word, I said, but I'm here. He nodded once, like that was good enough. We walked up the courthouse steps side by side. My stomach rolled once, twice, then settled like a storm that had already made landfall. When we reached the hallway outside the courtroom, I saw them. Vera, sitting tall in a fitted blazer, legs crossed, that faintly fake smile she wore like armor plastered on her face. Conroy beside her, hands clasped like he was at a church he didn't believe in. And Malis, scrolling her phone, looking like she had somewhere better to be. They didn't look worried. They looked smug. They still thought I was that girl, the one who asked instead of acted. The bailiff opened the doors, and we filed in. I sat beside Elston at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, they settled in like they were watching a play. The judge entered, stern and alert, the type who had seen every kind of lie and never found one particularly interesting. We began. Elston stood, handed over the original will. It was crisp, notarized, sealed in every way that mattered. Your Honor, this is the last legal testament of Micah Fairwin, Elston said, stating clearly that all assets, including the home at 163 Palmetto Avenue and any financial holdings, were to be transferred solely to his daughter, Thea Fairwin, upon her 18th birthday. His wife, Vera Halden, was appointed temporary custodian only. The judge reviewed it silently. Vera didn't blink, but I saw the slight shift in her jaw. The way her fingers dug into the chair's armrest. Then came the unraveling. The judge asked Vera, point blank, about the scholarship funds. Vera leaned forward, voice syrupy. We were just trying to support her. She wasn't ready to handle that kind of responsibility. We thought, Elston cut in. Your Honor, with your permission, I'd like to submit proof that the funds were withdrawn without Thea's knowledge or consent. He handed over the statements, the email exchanges, the audio I had recorded the night Vera justified taking my scholarship. The courtroom grew still. The judge studied the papers, then looked over his glasses at Vera. You were not the legal owner of those funds. You were the caretaker. That distinction matters. Vera cleared her throat. She never acted like a daughter, not once. The air in the room changed. The words didn't shout. They sliced. No one gasped out loud, but I felt the ripple. The judge looked at me. Miss Fairwin, do you have anything to say? I stood slowly. They erased me, I said calmly. Out of pictures, out of holidays, out of every part of my life that should have felt like mine. I've been ignored, dismissed, used, and I let it happen for a long time. But it ends here. He nodded, scribbled a note, and then said, This court recognizes the last will of Micah Fairwin. Full ownership of the property and any associated rights are to be transferred immediately to Thea Fairwin. The current occupants will vacate the premises within 10 days. Furthermore, any funds taken from the scholarship award are to be returned in full within 30 days, or pursued through civil restitution. There was no applause, no music, just the shuffling of papers and the thud of the gavel. Elston looked at me. I didn't smile. I just exhaled. We left the courthouse without a word exchanged between me and the people I had once shared a roof with. Vera's stare tried to cut through me like it always had, but I didn't flinch. The ride back to the house was quiet, save for the sound of my breath coming easier than it had in years. When we pulled into the driveway, it hit me harder than I expected. This was mine now. Not the wallpaper, not the curtains, but the right to stand on that porch and not be told to go back inside. The right to hang a painting and not find it in the trash 3 days later. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air was stale, like it hadn't been breathed in properly for a long time. Room by room, I walked, touching walls like you would reintroduce yourself to an old friend you hadn't seen since childhood. In the attic, buried beneath boxes labeled seasonal and Mayless college prep, I found the painting I had made in 8th grade. A watercolor of a field and a girl standing in the wind, arms wide, face turned toward the sun. It was wrinkled, water damaged, but intact. I rehung it in the hallway, right where it used to be. 2 days later, the Rolls-Royces came. They didn't roar down the street. They arrived quietly, respectfully, one after another, like a funeral procession in reverse. 6 of them, black, polished, solemn. Out stepped men and women in leather jackets and pressed jeans, some with gray in their beards, others with silver in their eyes. One of them carried a framed photo. Me, maybe 5 years old, on my dad's shoulders. I didn't recognize their names, but I knew who they were. My father's people. Family the bloodline forgot, but the soul remembered. They lined up along the driveway, removing helmets, nodding like they'd made a promise they were here to keep. The last rider was a woman. Tall, brown skin, eyes that looked straight through you. She stepped forward, handed me a small box. "Your dad saved my life," she said simply. "This home is now yours, but you've always been family." Inside the box was a charm bracelet, the initials MF engraved into a silver plate. I held it tightly, chest full and quiet. Justice had arrived, not with sirens, but with motorcycles and memory. 2 weeks after the courtroom gavel fell, the house was quiet in a way I'd never experienced before. Not silent like tension, not loud like arguments muffled behind doors, just quiet. I lived here now, alone. The Halden name was no longer on the deed. Conroy's worn recliner had been dragged to the curb. Mayless's boxes of makeup, once crowding the bathroom counter, were gone. Even Vera's wine glass, the one with the gold rim she'd drink from while scrolling her phone and ignoring my existence, had vanished from the cabinet. What remained was air I could finally breathe. I'd kept the furniture minimal, a thrift store sofa, one wooden table I sanded and repainted, a bed frame Elston helped me carry in from the back of his truck. Every item had intention. Nothing had memory I didn't choose. In the front hallway, I created a small corner, what I called my quiet altar. A photo of my dad, the necklace he left behind, a candle I lit each night before bed, and the court papers folded neatly in a brass tray. It wasn't about bitterness, it was about clarity. I didn't inherit a house. I reclaimed a promise. The town reacted faster than I expected. After the court ruling hit the local paper, a few neighbors who used to turn their backs when I walked by started leaving folded notes on the mailbox. Most didn't say much, just, "I'm sorry," or "We didn't know." One letter, in neat cursive on a pale blue card, simply read, "You deserved better. You always did." I didn't respond, but I read each one, every single word. Some of Mayless's classmates started dropping by in awkward pairs, holding grocery store bouquets or mason jars filled with cookies. None of them stayed long. Some stammered apologies, others said nothing. I didn't need their guilt, but I accepted their presence. A few days later, an envelope arrived with no return address. Inside was a card, plain, beige. "I never stopped looking for you." It was signed, Norleen, my aunt, my father's sister. I didn't know where she was writing from. She didn't leave a number or address, just those 7 words. but I taped the card on my bedroom wall beside the letter Dad wrote me and whispered thank you to the space between them. That weekend, I reorganized a few boxes in the attic and came across something I hadn't seen in months, a folded paper towel wrapped around a note, the edges yellowed. It was the housekeeper's handwriting. The one who used to work here before Vera let her go. You don't deserve the way they treat you. Your dad would be proud. He built walls, but you filled them. I sat on the attic floor and held it in my lap. That woman, Lottie, had always left a second sandwich in the fridge with a note that said, "For later." She was the only one who called me sweetheart in this house. I took a photo of the note and slid it into my Truth Archive folder. The truth wasn't just for courts, it was for healing. That night, as the candle on my altar burned low, I opened my laptop and reread the first letter I had sent to Elston, the one I barely remembered writing. Hi, my name is Thea. I'm turning 18 next month. My dad was Micah Fairwin. He died when I was little, but I still remember the way he sang country songs in the kitchen and how he smelled like leather and mint gum. I stopped halfway through. Tears came. Not because I was hurting, but because the girl who wrote that letter believed someone might still care. And someone did. I let the tears fall, not to drown, to release. The next morning, I stepped out to get the mail and found another envelope. No stamp, no name. Inside, a handwritten message. You got what you wanted. I hope you're proud. I folded the note carefully and placed it beneath the candle beside Dad's picture. Not with anger, just as a final page. Vera had lost her job a few days after the verdict. Her name had quietly disappeared from the agency's website. People stopped answering her calls. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when you've built your life on image and narrative. Letting go of rage felt like exhaling after years of holding your breath. I used part of the inheritance to lease the small shop next to the house. It used to be a boutique salon, but the sign had faded and the windows were dusted with pollen. I named it Legacy, not just for my father, for the version of myself I had fought to become. Opening day was quiet but meaningful. A few neighbors trickled in, drawn by the chalkboard sign and scent of fresh espresso. I served them coffee, muffins, and a smile that wasn't forced. That afternoon, the front bell chimed and Norlene walked through the door. She looked older than I remembered from the photos, more lines on her face, but the same eyes. We stood for a moment in the middle of the shop, both unsure who should move first. Then she opened her arms, and I stepped into them. At the table near the front window, we sat with 2 cups of coffee between us. Outside, the wind picked up and rattled the branches of the magnolia tree out front. "I wish I'd come sooner," she whispered. "You're here now," I said. She looked around. "This place feels right." I nodded. "I didn't need them to say I belonged," I told her, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. "I made it true." Outside, the street buzzed with Saturday calm. People walked dogs. A kid zipped by on a skateboard. Life didn't pause, but mine had restarted. Some people inherit houses, others inherit hurt. I turned both into home. Sometimes family isn't who shares your last name, but who shows up when you have nothing left to offer. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, if you've had to build your worth from the pieces others tried to break, this story was for you. What would you do if your own family turned their back on you and strangers showed up in their place? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. And don't forget to subscribe for more true emotional stories that remind us, sometimes the people who love you most are the ones you find, not the ones you're born to.